My conversation today on Behind the Act is with Joaquin Rodriguez. He's an artist, a guitarist, and a content creator. And today we're talking about finding acceptance in subcultures like heavy metal music and following certain sports teams, as well as how learning to be vulnerable with others is a strength and not a weakness. I'm Seth Schaefer. This is Behind the Act with Joaquin Rodriguez.
Hi. Hey. Out of all the things that we've done like these past 9 days, this is probably the thing I'm most nervous for whatever reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that right away then. What are you nervous about?
I'm a very mellow person who doesn't really like to share too much, I guess, unless if it's in an artistic form of my choosing. So talking about just being kind of open about really sensitive subjects can be intimidating, especially when there's cameras and, microphones all around.
Right. I guess, okay, you just mentioned the last 9 days. What have you done the last 9 days?
Yeah, so we recorded a new Fatal Laceration EP that really stoked for. Really, really stoked for. I think this is the most mature thing we've done to date. And granted, we're still probably babies in the industry, Yeah. But it's a beautiful thing, man, because I think with these two songs that we did, it's the most emotional, the most vulnerable that I've been in the writing process. And that happened naturally, but also very intentional at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really stoked with that.
What does Fatal Laceration do?
So we are a metal band. You could categorize us right now as a deathcore band if you want to get very specific with it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we're native to Colorado. We're a 3-piece band doing 5-piece band music. So yeah, I mean, we're a couple dudes who've been really passionate about this particular genre for most of our lives. Have been a part of it in some way or another, whether it's actually, writing music or just being part of the scene, going to shows and everything like that. So that it's a deep-rooted passion for sure. We grew up with it.
Yeah. How do you describe deathcore, just for people that don't know the genre?
Yeah. So deathcore, man, that's a difficult thing to answer, to be honest with you. Instrumentally, very heavy, right? We're talking low-tuned guitars, low-tuned 6 strings or 7s, even 8s. And extreme vocals, the screams, the growls, gutturals, all those things, and very fast, tight drums. It's just very aggressive music to the untrained ear, but to somebody who understands the scene, who understands the culture, it's very healing. It's very therapeutic. It's very necessary. Because it's a very honest way. If you listen to the lyrics, listen to the songs, it's a very honest way of expression that might not seem as forced as you think it would be just by listening to it for face value.
When did you fall in love with metal?
I was born into it. Yeah, so I want to say, I was born in 97. In 99, Slipknot's self-titled album came out. And during that time, on my mom's side of the family, my mom, my uncle, fans of the genre, fans of Slipknot, fans of Deftones, Korn. So I was immediately surrounded by that. That's what was playing in the car. My uncle had bought Slipknot's VHS tape called Welcome to Our Neighborhood. And that was just more of an introduction of this new debut album they came out with, is an introduction of who they are as a band. And so I remember that's something I would always request to be watching. You know what I mean? So it's I would be watching Blue's Clues, Rugrats, and Slipknot. You know what I mean? So it was natural. It was just so natural. I loved it.
That's awesome. You said you like to be vulnerable in your art, but it's a little bit revealing and uncomfortable doing it potentially in this format.
Sure.
What is it about music that drives you and the act of expression, which, you and I have gotten to know each other well, and I know you to be someone who's insightful and intelligent emotionally, but your art, I mean, I guess talk to me about the difference between sharing deep emotions through art or in a more vulnerable format like this.
Right. Yeah. And, definitely speaking for myself here, when it comes to, I'm just going to say guitar because that's my main instrument. For me, all that emotion, whether it's good, whether it's bad, what have you, it's easy to translate that into the instrument. 'Cause I would say I'm not the best with words. I'm getting better, especially like lyric writing or what have you. But it's much easier for me, like if I'm feeling something, even if it's something that's subconscious or whatever, that just translates naturally to the guitar. And it's I'm in a situation now where like I can capture that easily. Like I have my own like little home studio, so it's easy to capture emotions. If I can't say how I'm feeling, I could show you how I'm feeling, like through guitar, through like screaming, through vocals. You know what I mean? It gives me a voice when I feel like, yeah, I can speak, but am I speaking the right message?
You said emotions good or bad, and I know what you mean, and I think everybody knows what you mean.
Right.
But I want to explore what are bad emotions.
I guess, are you asking me what my bad emotions were that went
I guess
into
I'm
what
more
we did?
entertaining the idea that there are not emotions that are bad, that you need to be able to engage with them in a healthy way, and
Right.
But
And I guess that's something that I've been recently learning. It's just being able to handle certain emotions in a better way, right? Because I'm motivated by a handful of things, and these past couple of years I've been driven by unhealthy things, and I've been holding on to unhealthy things to be able to drive me, and I know that typically any therapist to anybody would say, hey, you got to let go of that. But when it works, yeah.
yeah, what are the next steps for you in art and music, and what are your dreams with art and music?
I would say grow more in a professional manner. As I mentioned earlier, we're still, I would say, babies in the scene. Even just like me as a musician, as a videographer, and on all that, I still feel like I will say I feel like I don't give myself enough credit in a lot of ways. I'm really hard on myself, but I feel like there's levels to the game. Like even though art is very subjective, I still feel like there's levels to it. And I just want to keep, just ranking up pretty much and just be very well respected in whatever industry I want to be in.
Yeah.
Because, I'm a very driven person. I just want to make a name for myself in anything I do.
Yeah. Talk to me about your drive for the well-rounded creative, like you said, videography and photography. And well, you didn't say photography, but I know photography and social media and posts and, music. What is all of that compiling up to in the potentially like a legacy direction or something? What are your goals?
Yeah. So my core motivation is legacy, for sure, creating a legacy. And that might sound very cheesy, but for me, it's very honest. And it comes from like, I understand the sacrifices my grandparents made to get our family here. I understand the sacrifices my parents made for me, especially, they got married at a young age and got divorced at a young age, had me at a very young age, but still stayed very united and still mature about the whole situation of raising a child. Even if, them being divorced, they were very respectful about it, And so I even at a young age, I understood the sacrifices that they made for me. So the least I can do is be successful. The least I can do is make our name famous, whatever that means, right? But it's not necessarily like just for me, like I want to do that for them. With that being said, there's no pressure from them. I don't feel like I need like approval from like my parents. It's nothing like that at all. Yeah. Like I could have like a freak accident right now and not be able to do anything, and they would be super proud of what I've been able to do up to this point. It's more so I want to be able to take care of them. Like if they ever ran into like really tough times, I want to be able to easily support them, like no problem. Or when they become seniors, I want to be able to take care of them with no problem.
Yeah.
So
yeah. What drives you internally more than the externally from there, like from a day-to-day standpoint? Like I know you're constantly working on new skills and practice and things. So what's that drive about?
You know, that kind of goes back to what I was talking about, some of the unhealthy things that drive me. You're asking me now, and a lot of that is going to be some of those unhealthy things, right? So a couple years ago, dealt with, let's just call it a death of a reality, right? And to be honest, I needed that because I was getting too comfortable. I was getting too comfortable with a lot of the losses that I was getting, right? So having that death of a reality, so to speak, ignited a fire in me that I haven't felt in a very long time. And with that fire, I've been able to achieve so much in this 2-year period of time that I've ever had in my life, And the unhealthy parts, like I keep bringing that up, even though I should let go of it. But it's, I get afraid. I get afraid. It's like if I let go of that, do I become comfortable? Because if I'm comfortable, then I start, you know what I mean, declining.
Talk about what does comfort look like in your definition of it that way?
I think it's being satisfied with where you're at currently, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But like when I think of being satisfied, being comfortable, it's like, okay, I'm happy with where my skill sets are at right now. I'm happy with where I'm at in life right now. Even though that may be true, like I'm proud of the progress, but I don't want to plateau here.
Yeah.
So I just fear like getting too comfortable means like, okay, now it becomes harder to keep ranking up because I've ran into that myself and I don't want to do that again.
Yeah. I see you as someone who is quick to be unsatisfied with the level you're at on certain things at the same time as, at least between us, self-championing and being very genuinely excited about new stuff. Where you're like,
right.
Dude, check this out. I just rocked it on this. And you like know that you're not hitting levels of like Hollywood yet, but you're able to find the joy in the moment of you conquering a new level. And I love that.
For sure.
Talk to me about that balance between the excitement for doing a great job of where you're at now versus the anxiety of not being good enough that drives the progress.
And that's a new thing, to be honest. Like I'm very resilient. I've gone through a lot of barriers, right, that have forced me to be patient and forced me to be kind to myself. That's the new thing. I haven't been kind to myself like early on. And that's what's caused a lot of, I guess you could say, like depression, a lot of the anxiety, a lot of, I'm hard on myself and I think that's okay. But there has to be a balance of being kind to myself as well. So when I learn these new skills, they're small victories. These little like milestones are worth, celebrating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's important to realize. But always being aware, like I love surrounding myself by like people who are better than me too. Like I always think it's important to have mentors around me. Like I have a specific mentor like on the music side, being Jordan, Jordan Lockery. He's one of my favorite guitar players of all time. And I need him to be there to like, as a friend, obviously, 'cause he's a super awesome dude. But at the same time, he kicks my ass. Like when it comes to guitar, like he is, I look at him like,
it's like, oh, I thought I knew how to play.
Right, exactly. Then I have, my other mentor being you, who like, you you do like so much for me, right? Like I look at you as like as a life coach. I look at you as like a business like mentor, and even a music mentor. Like and videography and stuff like that. And like you,
not guitar for sure,
right? But yeah, like in all those things, like cool. You kick my ass in that too, and I need that to stay motivated. Like there's more to do.
Yeah.
there's more to do.
I will say, I feel like you come hungry to learn something, and so I can be brutally honest, and you do a good job going, okay, and you rally on that. And I definitely appreciate that, and it makes it fun when we're in the well, I mean, obviously it's all friend, but like the non-friend coaching side of it, like I feel like you take that stuff really well, and that allows for you to progress quickly. So going on that, how do you not get offended when somebody tells you that you sucked at something that you thought you were good at?
Yeah, and I struggled with that a lot. I really did struggle with that a lot. It's you have to be comfortable. I think what's really cool, like with you and Jordan, like I trust you all very well for you all to see that vulnerable side of me, and that's super important and intentional too. Because like if I could show you the worst piece of footage I've ever done in my life, or if I could show Jordan like the worst riff that I've ever written in my life and feel comfortable about that, I can take the criticism and the healthy criticism and just keep. We essentially just make a relationship, right? And I think that's where it comes from. Yeah. And I think that also helps, like, kind of builds, you could say, maybe even a little bit of a tougher skin when it comes to other people who you might not be close with, when they want to kind of criticize you a little bit. Yeah. That's trained me well to accept that as well.
I wonder if it's kind of in the same camp as, well, when I'm trying to learn a new skill, I try to fail as quickly and early as possible, and I love it, and I do it often. And I guess having mentors, it allows you to just have them force you to fail earlier or something.
Right. Yeah, totally.
I mean, I definitely am constantly seeking mentors and mentorship on whatever, all of the things that I've talked a lot about on the podcast. But I'm like, I don't know how to do this. And I'm really comfortable with the fact I don't know. And tell me how I suck at this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other cool thing with that is, like, I love relationships. Like, I love building powerful, like, relationships that actually mean something, you know what I mean? Where it's not like transactional, like you're using somebody or whatever. Like, we have a solid friendship at the end of the day. Yeah. You know what I mean? I have a solid friendship with Jordan at the end of the day. Right. And that's very important to me. Yeah. That means the most to me,
Let's take a side trail for a second. And I want to go into the music front, because as you've approached music and going into new songs, you come from the heavy background of deathcore. Right. And we were talking about the idea of doing, some stuff together. And I had mentioned I'm not super interested in being, quote unquote, religious about any specific set of criteria that need to match any genre, period, ever. But I also want to give credence to what it is. What's your feeling of how genres progress over time and why?
Yeah, well, specific to deathcore, there was a lot of gatekeeping early on, and we're starting to see that fade a little bit, which is great. I think that gives artists more freedom to say, hey, it's okay for me to evolve, right? And go ahead.
Is that because of the listeners more, or the
Yeah. I want to say, like, early on, I feel like there was a lot of, like, pushback from, like, listeners, like when bands try to do something new or fresh or what have you. But, we're starting
a tribe running the leaders.
Right. And, we're starting to see less of that, which is great. I'm very open-minded when it comes to, like, evolution of music, right? Because, I mean, before deathcore was deathcore, I was very much into the new metal scene, which, Slipknot, Deftones, all that stuff. But, like, once the heavier stuff started to come up, it's like, oh, no, that's too much. That's too much. Like, you play 7 strings? No, that's not real guitar. You're not a real guitar player. Oh, you play 8 strings? Who are you? You know what I mean? But it's like, I don't want to become that person. Like, to, like, when I'm, like, in my 40s, 50s, I don't want to be that person to the kid who is, like, creating, like, a new genre in the metal scene. You know what I mean? I don't want to be that guy who just limits somebody's creativity, because at the end of the day, that's what it is, limiting somebody. So
okay, so in that camp too, where's the balance between trying to win? I'm going to go outside of the music scene for a second, but trying to win and like be the person that gets the client or gets the contract versus supporting and enabling other people? I mean, how do you perceive that?
I don't know. I'm not quite sure. That's interesting because I like, this could be a weird way to put it, but I love signatures. I love when people have like their own signature sound. And I think that's kind of like what I want to shoot for too, is like having something that's very a signature style to me. You know what I mean? I think that's like a beautiful thing, regardless of like what direction I go genre-wise or whatever. Like it's always going to be, you listen to a song and you hear my guitar parts, like, oh, I know that's Joaquin. Like, I know that, at least speaking for myself, that's what I strive for. I strive for something that people could just really pick up on and really know that's me. And I guess, I don't know, expand on your question a little bit.
I think I was thinking outside of film, I'm talking even just generally. Like, I mean, you know, if you want to support people, you seek mentorships because you want people to help. You learn how to fail early so you grow faster, become better. And there's this natural tendency, I think, for people to be competitive. And I don't necessarily feel that in Nashville at all for the music side, or at least I haven't. But on on a business side, for example, if we'll just say in town XYZ, you open up a film company and there are no others, which I'm not in this case. I've never been here, but I'm just like making up a story really quick. As soon as another film company shows up, it feels threatening, but it's actually helpful for business because more people know that they need it and they now have options, and like there's ways to expand. But I think that there's this natural desire to win, and so you kind of want to like take out the competition, but it's also helpful to it's really actually just better to just be the helpful person and help competition. So I'm curious just what your thoughts and experience are on that.
It's funny because I'm a very competitive person. Right. I've always been a competitive person, like even as like a kid. And that just comes like more so like from my sports background and everything like that. But like as I started to mature a bit more, like to your point, like there's a lot of benefit of actually becoming friends with other people who are in your scene, because they open up your mind to things you've never thought of before, if we're being like completely honest. A part of me still likes that little feel of competition, friendly competition. Like I never have the mindset of like cutthroat competition. Like I'm here to like wipe you out, of the scene. Like that's not how I function. Like if I were to be competitive, like us going head to head, I want to do that in the cleanest way as possible, of just like skill set to skill set, and no like, I don't know, just like unethical ways of going about it. So in terms of like music or like the videography stuff, like I pay attention to what's out there. I very much pay attention. There's a lot of things that motivate me. The competition like motivates me a lot too. Like seeing what other people are doing that I've never even thought of. It's like, oh, that's super dope. I got to step up my game. You know what I mean? Yeah. But then there's like certain things that are, let's just say like in the same like style, like let's say music wise, I've ran into a lot of like bands who are like kind of just came out of like the local scene, but I wouldn't have even known because like I just happened to discover them like on Apple Music. It's like, like these guys are just like dope, and like, oh, they barely just kind of like got up. That's so sick. And that's like me just being a fan of like, dude, that's awesome. Like I'm genuinely happy for you guys because you guys deserve it. You guys are so dope. You know what I mean?
Amazing.
So I go through those levels,
How do you become a fan? I mean, like, what are your actions that you do to like when you find somebody that you love? Like, I mean, aside from just following them, like,
I think a lot of it's going at it blind in a way, like taking out like the business side of me, the competitor out of me, and just like listening to it as well, at least music, like listening to it just as a normal consumer. That's the best way for me personally. When it comes like to videography, same way, just like looking at it as just like a general consumer.
How do you want people to support your band?
That's a good question. Listen to our stuff. No, well, yeah, I mean, just like listen to our stuff. Yeah, and I guess more so it's just like, don't be afraid to take that little bit of a deep dive on like what we have to offer. You know what I mean? Because like what I've tried to create isn't just us like playing instruments, making songs, like I'm trying to create like a brand as well. Like if you look at like even like Fatal Laceration, look at like a lot of the imagery and even like a lot of the lyrics, it's very medical based, and that's on purpose. And I actually get that like from my mom, who is an actual nurse. And I grew up with her like going like to nursing school and stuff like that. So I remember I was in high school when she officially became a nurse, and seeing how much she's grown like inspired me. Like a lot of the stuff like I see in her studies, she would share a lot of that information with me. So kind of naturally kind of made that piqued my interest, I guess.
Yeah.
If I weren't a musician, if I weren't a creative, I would have gone the medical field. I would have gone that route, like probably to become a doctor of some sort. So to incorporate that in music, to incorporate that into a brand, like in music, in horror, because there's a lot of horror elements on what we do.
Yeah.
It's an experience.
How much of the horror and interest in that comes from, by the way, earlier you mentioned like my grandparents did a lot to get us here from Mexico, right? And the culture you've shared with me, like different parts of that, I guess, explain how that's influenced as well your view and excitement about
just like
kind of like the darker side of things or whatever, you know?
Yeah, and I guess that's another thing that I was kind of, is a really weird way to say it, but born into it, I guess, because like that also kind of comes from my mom. So she was always like very into that. I don't know how you want to describe it, like more like the darker, like artistic stuff, you know, like horror movies, like all that kind of stuff I was introduced to like from my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, even just like a lot of Mexican like culture that has a lot of those darker elements. Cause it's funny, like at least how I grew up, a lot of my family is very Catholic, but something that you notice, like there's a lot of Mexican Catholics who are very superstitious. They're in like the dark witchcraft, like, you know what I mean? And it's interesting, like when you really dig into it, and like it's like a genuine fear that they have. So like, what do? I dive into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's kind of led me down the path of like getting into like paranormal stuff. And I grew up very religious myself. I no longer am, you know, which is fine, like whatever. But a lot of that, like to kind of figure out like what I believe in, like what I think happens like after death, whatever, like that led me down the path of paranormal. And that's influenced like, I don't know, it's a very beautiful world. It opens up your mind to something that you wouldn't think of, you know. And has that influenced my art? Yeah, especially kind of the visual stuff, because like it's fun to mess with that type of stuff. Like a lot of people may see that as scary. Hollywood runs with it, right? They over exaggerate it to get like thrills out of people. And I try to stay as authentic to what it actually is, because ghosts in reality aren't like this scary thing you're going to, you know, play with the Ouija board. Oh, all of a sudden you got a demon in your house. It's not like that. Right. But it's fun to explore and use that as a motivator for art.
That's awesome. Here's a whole other direction.
Okay.
Something that's scary to me.
Okay.
Sports.
Yeah.
What? Can you explain to me your view? Because we've talked about this.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what is your view of how and why sports are so viral, for lack of a better word coming out of my mouth at the moment, like for communities, and what do they do for groups? And
yeah, I mean, I'll say this just from a personal standpoint. Like my two like biggest passions in life is the creative world and sports. Of course, I'll say like I don't include like family in that, because that's a given. You know, I mean, that's always a given. So take that as you will. But you know,
course,
yeah. So for sports, for me, again, like kind of like with me, is like letting out those emotions. You know, sports for me was a way to let that out physically, to get that energy out of you. So it almost feels like you're being cleansed of it. Because like a lot of like the emotions like is great fuel for arts, but the feelings are still there. Like I still feel like they're trapped in me. Like I was able to kind of talk about it through music, but I wasn't able to actually get it out of me in a healthy way. So participating in sports like mixed martial arts and all that stuff really gave me the opportunity to cleanse myself in a very healthy, normal way. you know? And so now I'm more of just like a fan, right? I don't participate in sports anymore, but
talk to me about the fan side, because that still is a massive part of your life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm a huge football fan. Like I love the Dallas Cowboys, you know, and that comes from my dad, right? And some of the most wholesome moments that I've had with my dad is watching Cowboys games together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when I'm watching a Cowboys game, nothing else in the world matters. I have no stress. Nothing matters except for this moment.
Making sure they win.
Exactly. Only if they win.
And to be fair, I think it's helpful to communicate as well. Like, those are the most wholesome moments you have, but you also have a very great, tight relationship with your dad, right?
Yes,
so, like,
absolutely.
like these are deep moments, not just highlights you remember from the past. Or something.
Absolutely. And the thing is, it's like, it's not just my dad. I mean, I have a lot of family members on both sides of the family that are huge. Like the way like we always keep in touch is like football, really, like every Sunday or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And it's great because like I struggle with like staying in the moment. Either I'm stressing about the future or like, don't want to say regretting the past, but like stressing over like stuff that's happened or whatever. But when I'm in like sports mode, that's probably honestly the only times where I feel like I'm actually living in the moment. And that's a crazy feeling because like I don't get that often. It's only on Sundays, like 11 a.m. or whatever, you know, and that's there's something I can learn from that and actually take that and put it like train myself to like learn how to do that without relying like on the sports thing. Like I think that's like a great life skill to develop, and I think that's helped me like start that journey, you know.
So being a fan and understanding the community of just being a fan of a scenario you have no control over, being you're probably not going to be the next quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, and
way past that.
Right? yeah, no, but the idea that you could be a fan and know what community you gain, like the experiences, the community, being part of the community you gain. How does that help validate, or does it, or have you thought about this or whatever? The idea of building a fan base for your music, and what you can build as community for your music followers.
For sure. And I think what those two things have related is acceptance into a culture, right? Like if you're a fan, like let's say of the Dallas Cowboys, and you see somebody walking around with like the Dak Prescott jersey or whatever, it's like you immediately like you might not even know each other, but there's like that immediate connection that you have right away, that you're almost like friends without even knowing each other. And that's the same thing like with music. Like if I see somebody walking down the street with a Carnifex shirt and I've never met them, it's like we're already friends. Like, you know what I mean? It's like I got your back, you got my back. It's like this, we're protecting each other, like we're protecting like what we've like created. That's something I want to do as well with this band. I want to continue building that community, especially with where we're from, right? Colorado has a very healthy metal community, and I want to be a positive reinforcement to that. I want to be a positive mecca for that too, you know, like, which I'm wanting to start a podcast as well in a way where it's giving like these artists in the scene the ability like to sit down, just have like these deep conversations that aren't necessarily about, that's not an interview, right? It's more so like, let's get really deep with these conversations. Like what scares you? Like, what are you like super stoked about with this new project that you just started? Or if you're not a musician, but you're really in the scene already, it's like, what bands are you looking, what albums are you looking for? It's like listening to, what shows are you excited for? Like there's some people where that's their motivation to get out of bed. Like their life is so hard that what makes them feel like they have the confidence to still move forward are these bands. Cause it's acceptance. Like a lot of these lyrics in these like deathcore bands, these metal bands, you can really like relate to, you know.
I love that, and I think that's something I've never thought about in that way, that you have a built-in community of people that you're already friends with.
Right.
Because my relationship to communities that have dogma attached are basically around politics and religion, which if I can quickly summarize in a way that's not offensive, hopefully, to anybody. Not that I'd mind going into it that way, but I feel like if you are, let's say, religious and you have that as your identifier, people that are on the other side are actually scary to you. And if you're on the other side and you meet somebody who's religious, it's actually scary to the other people. If you're, if you're a Republican, Democrats are scary. And if you're a Democrat, Republicans are scary. And I think the idea that you can strongly understand that as a Dallas Cowboys fan, a Broncos fan, is not actually another scary human. It's just like playful, but you still get the same benefit of being accepted and loved as being a fan. So that's interesting, and I like that.
And you know what? That's actually something I find really special about the metal community too. And they make it a point that you don't have to believe this thing. You don't have to follow this certain thing. You could be genuinely who you are, and you're going to be accepted. You know what I mean? There's no checklist that you have to be a part of to be accepted to this community. And I think that's why I got so deep into Slipknot, because they're one of the bands that have been really open about saying that. Even in their live shows, I think every way they end a show is remember, take care of each other. It doesn't matter what walks of life you come from. It doesn't matter what race you are, what you believe in, what religion you are. You always have a home here.
Yeah.
And that's, you'll find that a lot in the metal community. And it's just so beautiful.
Amazing. I love it. Okay, so do you have a name for your podcast?
Inside the Wounds.
Okay.
Yeah, so Inside the Wounds, again, kind of another medical term. But it's also just about being vulnerable, having vulnerable conversations. And it doesn't even have to be bad. It could be just vulnerable on growth, because we had that conversation just a couple minutes ago. It's just these conversations about growth, exciting things, even comedic things. I want those moments, welcome any type of emotion in these conversations.
When you say vulnerable, I think, awesome, thank you. And then you go, it doesn't even have to be bad. And I'm like, what's bad? I define one thing that would be bad to be vulnerable.
Right. I think when people think of the word vulnerable, they're like, oh, I don't want to show you what's actually inside. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just kind of a scary thing to a lot of people. It's scary to me, depending on who I'm talking to.
For sure. Yeah, because you don't want people to take advantage of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But also
back to the competition thing, right?
Exactly. But also on the competition thing, realizing that helping other competition is actually healthier and better for you and makes you stronger. But and being vulnerable makes you stronger, Okay. And so far it's all metal based, right? People in the metal scene, fans of the metal. That's the direction you're going with the podcast, right?
Yeah. Well, in the music side, yes, because one of our first guests is actually going to be one of my current coworkers, fantastic videographer, TJ. And he's not a musician, to my knowledge. I don't even think he's a metal fan, but he is a very big part of the art community in Fort Collins, because he runs the First Friday every single month. So he gives artists the opportunity to display their work. He gives these artists a voice, right? And he helped me put my visuals out there, right? Because we worked really closely together with the music video that we did for Boundaries, which is a single coming out here very soon. Mm-hmm. And it was really important to have somebody that I trusted, that I can be vulnerable with, right? Because I directed it, I storyboarded it, I scripted it, everything like that, but also put a lot of trust in him to help bring this thing to life. So I would love to bring him in and just talk about that whole experience, because it was a ton of fun. It was a lot of work, very healthy too, in terms of creating some type of closure on certain things. You know what I mean? Yeah. But also really great learning experiences on a whole bunch of different fronts, from videographer point, from director point, everything.
Yeah. On your podcast front, what's your vision for what it ends up doing?
I would love, it kind of goes back to the community, right? I would love to be able to have get to a point where it's like, okay, we're having like weekly episodes with people who are either like local in the scene. Again, it doesn't have to be a musician. It can be like artists local to the scene, but also have a lot of people who are like very well established in the scene, which we already have some people scheduled already. But like make it seem like, hey, we're all people. Like we can all talk to each other. There's no like, I'm better than you because I'm at this point in my life or whatever. Like, let's eliminate all of that. Like we're all humans at the end of the day who like the same thing.
Right.
You know, but also I would love to get to a point where we can like do a lot of like things in person. Like if we can like maybe once a month, like get together, like at this brewery, like at Odell. And it's just like a lot of these fans or subscribers, like, let's all get together. Let's have a beer together. Let's actually talk. Like you've heard us talk like on camera or whatever. Let's actually mingle and like, let's get off camera for a second. Let's get into real life. Let's just chat. Let's just hang. Whatever, you know, like I would love to do that. That'd be dope. Like my own little First Friday thing, like for like metal like heads or whatever. Like that's what I would love to create.
So right now, so much of what you're doing is digitally focused. You said kind of at the beginning of the podcast, you like to create, you like to express yourself through the creative side.
Yeah.
But then you just said, which I love, is that you want to promote something that builds a community so you can do the in-person thing instead of the digital thing.
Right.
Why is it important, and how do you get there?
Yeah, absolutely. So that goes back to what I said earlier about loving like the relationships. I love connection. Like even though I'm like an introvert, that just makes when you do make a connection a lot more special, right? A lot more, you know, just genuine and just like stronger, you know? So in terms of how to do that, I think it's just being, you got to create like trust, right? Like we have to have some episodes out there that show a genuine version of who we are, because like I don't want to like put on like a mask pretending to be somebody else. If there's somebody who like will listen and be like, okay, like I feel comfortable with this dude, like I trust this guy, like this is somebody that I would have a beer with, like this is somebody that I wouldn't mind having like a deep conversation with. Like I think that's how it starts out. You know what I mean? Because like I don't want to put a version of myself out there that isn't realistic, that isn't genuine. First of all, I don't even know how to do that. But I think it starts there.
I think you have done a good job on this episode, and you started the episode off with the idea that you are nervous about being vulnerable, even though that's what you're wanting to dive into.
Right.
And I love that. I think it's good. So now we'll ask, what are you afraid of?
Man, that's a great segue.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of people talk about what's my purpose in life. I genuinely feel like my purpose in life is being like a storyteller, and you know, with music, it gives me a bunch of mediums to play with. And what I'm afraid of is if I'm not successful in that, like if I don't reach like the level I want to reach, like it's like, then what do I do? Like then what's my identity? Like I feel like I lose my identity. I'm just like flesh and bone, like just walking the earth. You know what I mean? Like it's to me that's scary. If I can't be successful on what I feel like I was put on earth to do. Yeah.
You say successful with a feeling of the answer seeming like it's a destination focus, and I'm sure you know we've talked a lot about defining it as being part of the journey, which I would like to point out that I think you're doing a good job on the journey aspect already. But of course, more numbers, more money, like to help cover things is great. But
let me clarify too. Like I'm not saying, you know, I want to be like this like millionaire, like big fancy house or anything like that. I guess like what my version of success is being able to like share my stories with like a wide audience and have people connect to that and be therapeutic to them.
Yeah.
Because I know what a lot of these bands have done for me therapeutically, you know what I mean? That have helped me through very tough times. And if I could be that to somebody, then I know that I'm successful. But then also the thing with like my parents too, like I want to be able to like to support them with my creative like endeavors, you know what I mean? My ventures. But you know, even too, like it would be amazing if like I was somebody's motivation to pick up the guitar. That's like such a wholesome thing for me. I mean, I'm really fortunate where one of my mentors, you know, Jordan, is somebody who's inspired me to get better. Like I would love to be that for somebody as well. You know?
Yeah. All of those things you're talking about feel to me like they're external, like they're dependent upon an external's perception of what you've done.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, right. Instead of having a focus on you being happy with the thing you can control and you are doing. And I am not saying that wouldn't be successful, but it seems risky, you know?
Yeah. And that's the thing. Probably one of my next steps that I need to learn, you know, because I think that mindset comes like from the sports world, as for my sports background as well, where it's like, it's a clear cut. You win, you lose. Right. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter how great your stats were, how many like catches you got, like how many, you know, touchdown passes you made, whatever. Like if you didn't win the game, none of that matters. You know what I mean? It's like you could have an amazing record during the regular season, but if you didn't make it to the Super Bowl or whatever, then did that really matter?
Right.
And that's kind of a dangerous mindset to have in real life, especially in the art world, creative world. But that's kind of what I'm struggling with right now, because I have that mindset in a world that's very subjective. That's very like the lines are blurred everywhere. You know what I mean? It's not as clean cut as like a you won or you lost.
Yeah. Even this week, as we're working on music, we'll have a take and we'll have a different take, and they're both good takes, and they had different emotions and they had different technical accuracies or not, but we weren't saying which one's better, right? We were just saying, which one are we going to use this time?
Sure.
And then we move forward and just call it good, you know?
Right.
What were we going to say?
Well, especially on the vocal standpoint, it's like which one like gives that proper emotion? Like, because to your point, like, let's even say on guitar, like we could record the same riff and they may sound the same, but like this one feels a little different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay, let's go into that a little bit. That you're a guitar player primarily, and then have learned and have been doing a good job with the vocal side, but it's newer to you, and you're nicer to yourself about the execution of the vocals because it doesn't. I don't feel like it attaches to your identity as much.
Yeah.
So it's easier for you to just be finished with it and be like, okay, cool. Yeah, we got good takes and critical too, and we came back and retrack stuff, but. Why when something attaches to your identity, why does something attach to your identity like the guitar playing, and why is it harder for you to get that stuff completed, and how is that, I guess, helpful to identify?
That's such a good question, and I don't know if I have like a good answer for it, to be honest, for you, because like, yes, like my first introduction into music is being a guitar player. I've been playing guitar since 2008, and that's something I've hit like head on for and been like really dedicated to for a very long time. And maybe that's it, the dedication part to it, the amount of time I put into it, because all of a sudden I start setting expectations for myself. I start comparing myself to other players, whatever. I think that probably has a lot to do with it. Whereas from a vocal front, like I've openly said this, like I'm a vocalist by necessity. Right, because like the very first EP we ever put out, the Bloom EP, we had a vocalist, right? So that wasn't a thing I had to worry about. But you know, when we lost our vocalist, you know, I tried looking for somebody else. Like I spent a lot of time, because the unfortunate thing was we lost our vocalist when we already had studio time booked, and I wasn't about to cancel that. Like I want to see this through. So when it was really clear that we weren't going to find another vocalist, I'm like, well, I've practiced this for, off and on for 5 years. Why not? Like, let's hit it a little bit harder. And luckily, like I was able to put on a performance that worked. But now, like going on like to the project that we just finished, I've been able to spend more time on like analyzing it a bit more, studying it a bit more. But at the same time, like you're right, like being a vocalist isn't part of my identity. Like I enjoy guitar a lot better, and maybe that's another thing of it. I enjoy the guitar a lot better. Therefore, like it connects to my soul a lot more versus like the vocal front. And maybe since it doesn't connect to me that deep, therefore it's not something I stress too much about. So maybe that has something to do with it too.
That's cool. So the guitar is the foundation of your music. It's the emotion of the tones and the rhythms and the feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then the vocals are because it's an instrumental track. If you don't know the vocals.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, they added a lot too. I mean, on the emotion moving forward, but
and it's fun. Don't get me wrong. Like singing, like being able to actually say the words to like what like drove like the emotion of the guitar in the first place, kind of connects the pieces. Like I'm a person who was able to connect it from the music side and from like the vocal side. Like, you know, that's cool. But, you know, I will say to you, a lot of my favorite musicians happen to be vocalists as well. So it was easy for me to kind of like know what I wanted to reach for. But at the same time, it's just, guitar's just more fun, man.
awesome.
I'm a gear nerd too. So like I love collecting guitars and amps and all that stuff, which I don't really get from like being a vocalist. So that's kind of part of it too.
Yeah. How do you identify that the moments today are equally as valuable and really more valuable than the destinations that you're driven to get to?
It's all chapters. We're marking chapters, right? It's all growth, you know, because this 2 songs that we wrote right now is a mark of what I was going through in this particular part of my life, which was important to talk about, which was really important to get out. But if I were to have written talk about this particular topic like 5 years from now, it wouldn't be as powerful. It wouldn't have been as emotional because I'm just talking about a memory of how I used to feel. Whereas like I'm feeling it right now. Let's get it out right now while the iron is still hot. You know what I mean? So it's, again, living in the moment, again, like get it out while it's fresh in you. So, and when you do that too, like there's little lessons that you take away. Like at least for me, every single time I've been in the studio, I've grown a lot from every single studio experience. And to me, that I can actually look at that and be like, that was a huge victory for me.
Yeah.
You know, and like what we did, I feel like I grew a lot as a songwriter and was able to see things more clearly, like from a producer's standpoint. So that in itself, I know that was a huge milestone for me. So I guess that's how I would look at that, as being successful right now, you know?
Right. What's the most important tip you could give to a young musician or artist at all who's maybe afraid to win?
I am really huge about finding some sort of mentorship, even if that's just a guitar teacher or what have you. Like if you have somebody that you can trust, especially if you're like an introverted person who's like really quiet and everything, if you have that one person that has more experience than you, who is willing to teach and everything like that, that could be a person that influences you, who honestly can like change your life, like legitimately, like the way you look at life, the way you approach life, like even like 20 years from now, like I think this way because of this person, what they taught me, you know what I mean? So my biggest advice would be find somebody you can trust, find somebody that you can be comfortably vulnerable with and learn from them. Don't be afraid to fail in front of them. You know what I mean? Like get comfortable with failing because that's okay. That is absolutely okay. That's how you win at the end of the day, is by failing now.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing with other people you think might gain value from it. My name is Seth Schaefer. This is Behind the Act.